Oh my. Oh my, child, you seem so afraid. You know what I find that soothes a scared soul? A good story. And I have the perfect one. Once upon a time.
It's Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. A very special event on select nights at Magic Kingdom Park. Wear your favorite costume and go trick-or-treating in the most magical neighborhood.
Hello and welcome to Theme Park History, the channel for everything to do with theme parks. Old and new, big and small. In tonight's tale, we feel a chill run down our spine, face our fears, and scream for our lives as we take a look at Universal Studios' Halloween Horror Nights, an annual Halloween-themed special event that takes place at Universal theme parks in Florida, Hollywood, Japan, and Singapore. This event was suggested by all these boils and ghouls who are in for the fright of their lives. So thank you to everyone for the comments. As always, if there's an attraction you would like us to cover in future videos, leave a comment down below. You never know, your scaregestion might be next month's video. Okay, that's it for the puns, I promise. Since its small beginnings back in the early 1990s, Halloween Horror Nights has been considered by many to be the best annual Halloween event in the world. Known for their production of many classic horror movies, Universal takes the same creativity that went into their films and brings it to life in their theme parks. Behind a creative team working year-round, along with special effects, scare actors, makeup artists, sound stages, and movie-making experts at their disposal, Universal Creative has been able to create unique experiences to terrify guests for almost 30 years. What makes Halloween Horror Nights stand out when compared to other Halloween events are the stories, characters, and settings it has created during its lifetime, making it an event for those who are brave enough to face one they won't be able to forget for a very long time. Our tale begins in 1991 at a place we are very familiar with, Universal Studios, Florida. The theme park, which opened a year earlier, was struggling with attendance due to its three major attractions, Confrontation, Earthquake, and Jaws, constantly breaking down due to massive technical problems. While the park would see an uptick in guests in the summer of 1991 thanks to the grand opening of Back to the Future the ride, Universal was still looking for a way to draw guests to the park during the slow fall season. Jay Stein, the chairman and CEO of Universal Parks and Resort at the time, approached Julie Zimmerman, a creative director for the park, with an idea for an event, a Halloween party at Universal Studios, Florida. Zimmerman began working on ideas for the event, which would include a haunted house maze being built in the vacant Jaws queue, along with bringing in local performers and creating a party environment unlike anything guests would experience if they were visiting the park during a regular operating day. Zimmerman's idea was greenlit, and Universal Studios Florida's first ever Halloween event, Fright Nights, was official. The event, which ran for 3 nights, cost $12.95 per person plus tax, and would take place between 6 p.m. and midnight. The event's only haunted house, the Dungeon of Terror, would have guests travel through a dungeon filled with prison cells. In the cells would be actors, some dressed to look like guests from the event, being tortured. The event was a massive hit, as not only was the haunted house well received by guests, but ticket sales were much higher than Universal had expected. With the success of Fright Nights, it was clear to Universal they had something and could tap into a market that their rival, Disney, didn't already capitalize on. The event would return to Universal Studios Florida in 1992, but with a name change, Halloween Horror Nights, due in part to copyright issues.
This Halloween, party with your favorite monsters during Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Florida. And right now, carve out savings of up to $16 off admission with this special coupon you'll find on 2 liters of Pepsi.
While the Dungeon of Terror maze would return for the event, a new house would be created, one based off the movie The People Under the Stairs, making its debut in Soundstage 23. The movie, which was written and directed by Wes Craven, was released the year before and was a surprise box office success. Another addition to the event would be Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure.
Excellent!
The show, which is based off the 1989 movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, satirized pop culture of the year with Bill and Ted as the protagonists fighting villains who steal their phone boot for their own schemes. The 1992 event would run for 5 nights instead of 3 and was once again a major success. Florida wouldn't be the only park to have a Halloween event that year. Due in part of the success of Florida's Fright Nights, Universal Studios Hollywood would host their own Halloween Horror Nights. But unlike Florida, the Hollywood event wasn't a huge success due to competition from another local and more established Halloween event, Knott's Scary Farm. Universal Studios Hollywood would not host another Halloween Horror Nights until 1997. In 1993, the event would once again return, this time expanding to 7 nights instead of just 5. Due to the reopening of the Jaws attraction, the haunted house maze, the Slaughterhouse, was moved from the Jaws queue in Amity to the Nazarmen's facade in the New York area. The People Under the Stairs house would return to Soundstage 23, and a new house, the Psychopath Maze, would take place in the Bates Motel set. To help build on the success of the 1992 event, Universal would spend $10 million on marketing the 1993 event. The event would go on to draw an estimated 100,000 guests that year, most of them being locals. It became clear to Universal that Halloween Horror Nights was quickly becoming an event people wanted to attend. Universal kept the momentum going in 1994 with Halloween Horror Nights 4, which saw the return of a newly designed Dungeon of Terror, now located inside the Earthquake Overflow queue, along with 2 new houses, the Boneyard, located within the Boneyard attraction, and Hell's Kitchen, located in the Narcimin's facade. This year's event would also mark the first time the event would feature the use of a scare zone, a specific outdoor area that features costume characters that fit a specific theme with the intent of scaring people who walk through the area. The scare zone, named Horrorwood, was located on Hollywood Boulevard and featured the Chainsaw Drill Team, who have appeared at almost every Halloween Horror Nights event in Orlando. This year would also mark the first use of the term scare actors, as well as the first official Ghoul School for actors participating in the event. For Halloween Horror Nights 5, the event expanded to 12 nights and was marketed all across the United States through both television and radio coverage. Universal would also offer gory getaway travel packages by partnering with local hotels. This year would also introduce the idea of the event being themed around a character. For this year, it would be the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt.
Murder, madness, mayhem, and that's just the fun part. Welcome to the crypt. You're in good company.
For those who don't know who the Crypt Keeper is, he was the host of the HBO horror anthology television series Tales from the Crypt, in which he would use tons of cheesy puns and terrible one-liners to introduce each episode's story. For this year's event, the event would be subtitled The Curse of the Crypt Keeper, and the Crypt Keeper would have his own house, Crypt Keeper's Dungeon of Fear. Another first for Halloween Horror Nights 5 was Universal's House of Horror, a dual-path house. Guests could choose between 2 paths. One side would show classic horror movie monsters, while the other would show newer horror movie monsters. Halloween Horror Nights 6, Journey into Fear, would expand to 15 nights and started even earlier than before, and ended later in November. While the Crypt Keeper would return, he would not be the icon for the event. Instead, he would be the Grand Marshal for the event's first ever parade, the Crypt Keeper's Festival of the Dead Parade. The 1996 event would mark the end of Julie Zimmerman as the creative director of the event, as she started working on a project outside of Universal Studios. Even with Zimmerman's departure, Halloween Horror Nights would continue to grow. By 1999, the event would run for 19 nights, boasting 5 haunted houses, 3 shows, and a nightly parade. Halloween Horror Nights 9 would introduce the first ever 3D house, titled Universal's Creature Feature. Guests would wear 3D glasses to see blood, vomit, and severed limbs in another dimension, with special paint used to make flat objects appear rounded. The double-digit growth year after year would make Halloween Horror Nights the most attended Halloween event in the world, surpassing Knott's Scary Farm. While the event was a success and showed outstanding growth year after year and received positive reactions from guests all around the world, Universal wasn't about to take their foot off the gas. Universal had plans for the future of the event, taking it in a new and exciting direction, one that would change Halloween Horror Nights forever. In the year 2000, Universal decided to do something unprecedented for Halloween Horror Nights 10. For the 10th anniversary of the event, Universal Creative made the decision to craft a central iconic figure, an original character that would represent this year's event. The creative team would come up with Jack Schmidt, better known as Jack the Clown.
Not afraid of the dark? You don't know Jack. Look out for the new Halloween Horror Nights 10, only at Universal Studios.
Jack, a former circus clown and serial killer, was given an extensive backstory for the event based around the murder of 13 children. On Halloween night 1920, after confessing to the owner of his traveling circus, Dr. Oddfellow, Jack was himself murdered and his body was hidden within the carnival's House of Horrors exhibit, along with the bodies of the children. After the exhibit was abandoned, it was eventually stumbled upon by a BBC documentary team 60 years later, who met a grisly fate. In 2000, Universal had now acquired the exhibit for this year's Halloween Horror Nights, not knowing the evil waiting to be unleashed. For the first time ever, every haunted house and scare zone would be tied in some way to Jack's story. The event will once again run for 19 nights with 5 haunted houses and an increase in scare zones to 4 instead of just 1. After Jack proved to be a huge hit with guests, Universal decided to expand on his backstory for Halloween Horror Nights 11 by having his younger brother, Eddie, kill him and take over as the icon of the event. Wielding a chainsaw, a metal muzzle, and a milky green eye, Eddie would be responsible for the increase of horror and terror guests would encounter at this year's event. However, the terrorist attacks on September 11th would lead to Universal making many changes to this year's event, including removing any references to blood, gore, body parts, and severed heads, along with the removal of the word terror. Eddie would also be dropped and Jack would return as the event's icon for the second straight year, with the tagline, "Jack's Back." Halloween Horror Nights 12 would move over to Islands of Adventure. The decision was made to change the location of the event due in part to the park's struggling attendance levels. Titled Islands of Fear, the event would see each of the park's islands become an evil, twisted version of its daytime self. Villains would take control of Marvel's Superhero Island, now called Island Under Siege, with dead bodies of heroes littering the ground. Jurassic Park would be finally overrun by dinosaurs, and the island's haunted house, named Evolution, would have guests come face to face with dinosaur-human hybrids. The Lost Continent was now named the Island of Evil Souls, presided over by a demon named Nightmare. The event would also introduce a new icon for the 2002 event named the Caretaker.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Catch a body by the toe. If he hollers, cut him low. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
The Caretaker wouldn't be the original icon for this year's event. Instead, it was supposed to be Cindy, the daughter of a mortuary-owned pallbearer. For this year's event, the original premise was for every land to be ruled over by one of her playthings. After several child abductions in the area, the Cindy concept was abandoned and her father, pallbearer, was changed to Dr. Albert Kane, better known as the Caretaker. Islands of Adventure would once again play host to Halloween Horror Nights 13 the following year, featuring another brand new icon, the Director.
Nothing compares to real blood on film. It's the only way to really capture the emotion, the fear, the reality that the victim is feeling. It tells the story truthfully. Yes, motivation is the key. My actors only get one take. It's a short take.
Paulo Ravinsky was a young and ambitious independent filmmaker who started his career creating snuff films. capturing actual human suffering, torture, and death on his camera. Paulo would be hired by Universal to film his newest horror film at Islands of Adventure. Here, he would turn each of the park's islands into a living horror movie as part of his dream project. While moving Halloween Horror Nights to Islands of Adventure would help boost the park's overall attendance levels, it would come at the cost of hurting attendance levels over at Universal Studios Florida. In an attempt to help both parks, Halloween Horror Nights 14 for the first time ever would take place across both of the parks.
There's no escaping Universal's Halloween Horror Nights, now in 2 parks for twice the fear.
The event would have 7 houses, 4 scare zones, 1 show, a parade, and many of the most popular attractions also open. 14 would also mark the first time since 1999 that the event did not have an icon. However, the caretaker, the director, Jack and Eddie would return to terrorize guests within the Horror Nights Nightmares house. The dual park experience would continue in 2005, as Halloween Horror Nights 15 would once again take place within both of the parks. Titled Tales of Terror, the event would introduce a new icon, the Storyteller.
Tired from his adventures, the little boy settled into his bed and slept and slept and slept. Wasn't that a good story? Dear, you look a little warm. Sweet dreams.
The Storyteller presents Tales of Terror at Universal's all-new Halloween Horror Nights.
Elsa Strick had come up with a tale of an ancient world called Terra Cruntis, a dark realm shrouded in both ancient and modern myths. For the first time in the event's history, all of the mazes, scare zones, and shows were linked to a larger event backstory, each revolving around the ruler of Terra Cruntis, the Terror Queen. Marvel's superhero island would become Blood Thunder Alley, the city where the Queen's residence resided. The Lost Continent would become Tangleroot Fire Pits, where warriors forged weapons for the Queen, and the Poseidon's Fury attraction would become the Terror Mines Haunted House. Terror Mines would introduce a special effect never seen before at the event. Every 10th guest would be given a hard hat with a light on it. As the guests and their group proceeded through the maze, the light would go out, change colors, strobe, or stay constantly on. Sensors throughout the maze would designate which effect would take place. For 2006, Universal decided to bring Halloween Horror Nights back to Universal Studios Florida for its Sweet 16.
Turn 16. 4 of the most horrifying figures return to Universal Studios for a Halloween homecoming you won't want to miss.
Advertised as Horror Comes Home, the event would be the first retrospective anniversary event and featured the return of the 4 original icons, each with their own house. Each house at the event would represent a popular house from the past events, updated with new characters, new effects, and a new look with a story that would connect it to the previous houses. The icons would also be featured in their own opening show of the night called The Arrival. The show would have each of the icons be summoned for the event one by one, each performing a signature kill they were famous for. Halloween Horror Nights 16 is considered by many fans to be the best in the event's history, due in part to the return of the icons and classic houses. While Halloween Horror Nights was a massive success at Universal Studios Florida by this point, the same couldn't be said over at Universal Studios Hollywood. Halloween Horror Nights would officially launch at Hollywood in 1997, running through the 2000 season. From 2001 to 2005, Halloween Horror Nights went on hiatus at Universal Studios Hollywood due to disappointing attendance levels. The event would be revived in 2006, and unlike the Florida event which showcased original characters created for the event, Hollywood's instead focused on movie characters, keeping with the studio's heritage. Not only would this idea go on to have a major impact at next year's Halloween Horror Nights in Florida, it would take the event in a different direction once again, one that is still felt today. On July 27, 2007, Universal would announce a deal with New Line Cinema to bring 3 horror icons: Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Halloween Horror Nights 17 at both Florida and Hollywood. This would mark the first time the parks would use the same theme for the event, along with the first time Universal would make a heavy push to license characters not owned by Universal for the event. Titled Carnival of Carnage, the event would once again be hosted by Jack the Clown.
So what's my future?
You don't have one.
The story for the event would see Jack kill his old boss, Dr. Oddfellow, and take over as the ringmaster of the carnival. Traveling the world, Jack would find a number of acts to add to his new Carnival of Carnage, including Jason, Freddy, and Leatherface.
You think you know me? You don't know Jack!
Movies would have a major role in this year's Halloween Horror Nights, with each of the 3 characters receiving their own house, along with 2 other horror films, The Thing and Dead Silence, being represented by houses as well. To counter the growing problem of long queues, there would be an increase in houses, now up to 8, and the event would span for a record 23 nights. The event would receive critical acclaim this year, due in part to the inclusion of arguably 3 of the most iconic horror characters from the silver screen. While the Carnival of Carnage would have a greater focus on licensed characters in horror movies, Halloween Horror Nights 18 would instead return to a focus on original houses, along with an elaborate backstory to this year's icon, Bloody Mary. Universal crafted their own tale of how the folklore came to be, now known as Dr. Mary Agana and set in 1958. Agana was a psychiatrist who would perform experiments on her patients using their fears and phobias. With each case, it became clear Mary's sanity was fading, as each patient would be killed in an attempt to cure them. These failed attempts would eventually lead to the doctor becoming a ruler of evil legends, Bloody Mary. The theme for the event would be reflections of fear, having guests step into the mirror and enter a world that contains twisted, disturbing, yet artistic versions of Bloody Mary. Ah, crap, I said it 3 times! Besides the shows, every house and scare zone would be tied into the legend of Bloody Mary, which took place in the realm of the mirror, consisting of fears, tales, urban legends, and nightmares. Halloween Horror Nights 19 placed a focus on something Universal Studios was very familiar with, having all the houses and scare zones at the event be based on classic horror Universal Picture films, as well as modern horror films as well.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. Chocolate bars and candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let the game begin.
The most horrifying movie entities have come to life. Universal's Halloween Horror Nights, the nation's premier Halloween event.
Titled Ripped from the Silver Screen, the icon for the event would be the usher, who worked at the Universal Palace Theater. Julian Browning is a mysterious undead usher who haunts and cares for the theater. The Universal Palace itself seems to be an evil entity, as it would attack those who do not show respect and proper etiquette while watching a movie in the theater. Houses this year would be based off of popular horror films like Saw, The Wolfman, Chucky, along with Silver Screams. A house that incorporated horror films including Phantom of the Opera, My Bloody Valentine 3D, The Thing, Evil Dead, Shaun of the Dead, and The Strangers. Halloween Horror Nights 20 Years of Fear would be both the 20th year of the Florida event and the second anniversary celebration. The event would see the return of classic icons like Jack, the caretaker, the director, the storyteller, the usher, and revealed an all-new icon, the one that was the mastermind of the last 19 years of Halloween Horror Nights. Fear. Influencing previous events through an old lantern kept in the Universal Studios art and design department, Fear has been slowly using others to prepare the way for his return at the 20th anniversary. The event would also feature the return of a former would-be icon, Cindy, as she would be featured in her own house, the orphanage, Ashes to Ashes. Fans consider the event as one of the best ever created, due to the return of the classic icons, along with their houses, each more detailed than the last with brief mentions, references, or even returning characters from the past. While it would celebrate the past 20 years of Fear would mark a significant change for the event once again, as going forward Universal was committed to creating new and frightening experiences for Halloween Horror Nights, instead of the ideas and concepts used in the past. This change would be on full display for Halloween Horror Nights 21, which would be overseen by this year's icon, Lady Luck.
Red, you win.
Be careful what you wager.
Black, you lose.
When you play with Lady Luck.
The icon could transform from a vixen to a predator with the spin of a Las Vegas-style roulette wheel to match the event's Blackjack 21 theme. Keeping with the theme of luck and chance, guests would be given a choice of paths throughout each house, each one affecting the outcome in the mazes with shifting walls and misdirectional signs. While she didn't have her own house, Lady Luck would be tied into each one, as it was a direct result of an encounter with her that saw people try their luck and lose. While the event would be well received for its different take on its houses and creating an experience not seen before, next year's event would be the end of the icon and its backstory as the main focus of the event, ending a 13-year streak. 2012 would be a milestone year for Halloween Horror Nights. With both the Florida and Hollywood events going strong year after year, Universal decided to expand the event to Universal Studios Japan. The Florida event would drop the icon concept and original houses in favor of houses based on the video game Silent Hill, musician Alice Cooper, Universal's classic monsters, and the horror television series AMC's The Walking Dead. The park would drop scare zones as well, opting for street experiences instead. These experiences would be roving hordes of warriors, bikers, and vampires that would roam the park so that no place was safe. The experience wasn't well received with guests, as it was seen as a way for Universal to not invest in the detailed scare zones people had grown to expect. Another problem was the different hordes were prone to stopping for too much or being hard to find, making some areas of the park empty and lacking atmosphere. Halloween Horror Nights 23 wouldn't change much in concept. The event will once again have no icon and kept a heavy focus on intellectual property-based houses, including the video game Resident Evil, horror movies The Cabin in the Woods, Evil Dead, An American Werewolf in London, and returning The Walking Dead. While scare zones would return for the event, they would have a distinct theme to them. Each scare zone would be themed to The Walking Dead, each representing a different location or iconic scene from the series. While fans of the event were not happy with the overflow of video game, film, and TV tie-ins, Halloween Horror Nights 23 was a hit, drawing record numbers due in part of the popularity of these franchises that were heavily promoted for the event. Halloween Horror Nights 24 would see the return of individual scare zones, and an increase in houses based on original concepts. The event would still feature houses based off of films and TV tie-ins, including The Walking Dead returning again, From Dusk Till Dawn, AVP Alien vs. Predator, and one one of the most famous horror franchises of all time, Halloween. The Walking Dead, end of the line, would be the longest house ever constructed at the time, and the first time the event would use the same house concept 3 years in a row. Even before 24 was over, Universal began hinting at what was coming for the event's 25th anniversary. Universal would release a recap and thank you video to fans for the success of Halloween Horror Nights 24, which would tease the return of the first original icon, Jack the Clown. Jack's return would be official in May 2015. Along with the announcement that Halloween Horror Nights 25 would now have a record 9 haunted houses and run for 30 nights, the longest span ever for the event. Jack would host his own show, The Carnage Returns. In his own house, Jack presents 25 years of Monsters and Mayhem, which would celebrate 25 years of Halloween Horror Nights Orlando and was made up of scenes from 14 classic houses. The event would also feature houses based off films Freddy vs. Jason, Insidious, The Purge, and the TV show The Walking Dead, which was returning for a 4th straight year. The celebration of 25 years of Halloween Horror Nights would be well received with guests, as it was a retrospective of the year's event humble beginnings as Fright Nights into the world's most well-known theme park Halloween event. Halloween Horror Nights 26 would be a direct sequel to last year's event and would feature a new icon, Chance.
Lock me away. It's all just a show. I'll make you pay. I won't let you go. While Jack's away, it's my turn to dance. My turn to play. You won't stand a chance.
Known as the right-hand woman to Jack the Clown, Chance would help torture people during the live shows Jack's Carnival of Carnage for Halloween Horror Nights 17 and The Carnage Returns for Halloween Horror Nights 25. After last year's show, both got caught and Chance would be put away in an asylum. While she was incarcerated, Chance entered her theater of the mind, which meant whatever gothic nightmares occurred in her mind would soon become a horrific reality. Chance would have her own house, Lunatic's Playground 3D, You Won't Stand a Chance, and the event would feature houses based on films Halloween, The Exorcist, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and TV shows American Horror Story and The Walking Dead, returning for a 5th straight year. Halloween Horror Nights 27 would once again see the icon concept dropped, and instead return to a focus on intellectual properties, with houses based on films The Shining, Saw, and TV shows American Horror Story and Ash vs. the Evil Dead, along with other original concept houses. The event would also be the last year Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure would be performed. The event would be successful once again, with the park reaching max capacity on select nights. Halloween Horror Nights 28 would have a 1980s theme and feature a record 10 haunted houses, running for a record 36 nights. The event would once again feature a mix of original houses and movie and TV show tie-ins. The main attraction of the event would be a house based off the Netflix series Stranger Things. After the mysterious and sudden vanishing of a young boy, the people of a small town begin to uncover secrets of a government lab, portals to another world, and sinister monsters. Just like the series, the house was a mega hit with guests, with the house seeing wait times of over 2 hours. Other houses included Trick or Treat, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and The Poltergeist. Halloween Horror Nights is one of the most popular and respected annual Halloween events in the world. For almost 30 years, Universal Creative has been able to create an event unlike any other, bringing characters, stories, themes, and atmospheres that have never been seen before and have rarely been matched by other competitors. Halloween Horror Nights has constantly won awards for the best Halloween event throughout its lifetime, and it's easy to see why. It's been willing to try new things each and every year, including creating memorable icons that have become fan favorites, and houses that guests are willing to wait on long lines to experience. Halloween Horror Nights is just as important to Universal Studios Florida as its classic attractions were. helping draw guests and shape it into the park we know today. So that is the theme park history of Halloween Horror Nights. As always, thank you for watching the video and supporting the channel. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if there's any attraction you want us to cover in future videos, leave a comment down below. Once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, happy Halloween!